Have you ever found yourself in a situation where scheduling doesn't allow for shooting either at dawn or dusk and you have to shoot in mid-sun? Like right now, it's 1 p.m, the sun is right above me and this whole image probably doesn't look good, and I'm currently fighting off not squinting too hard to even keep my eyes open. So we need to find a way of just making our image look a lot more professional, more pleasing, and just soften up the sun. So in this video, I will show you a really quick and easy way of how to diffuse the sunlight, and this can be done with only one piece of equipment. When looking at our little scene right here that only consists of 2 shots, one wide shot as well as one close-up of Carla reading, then we can probably get away on our wide shot without having to modify our light whatsoever. Because we're so far away, we don't really see all the imperfections and the hard shadows on the skin, and we just get a general idea of where our light source is coming from, and we have an establishing shot for our scene. If you're interested in how to diffuse even wider shots, I will talk about this later in this video, but now let's focus on the close-up shot. First, let's set up our camera for our close-up shot. I'm using the Canon C70 with a Sigma 50mm 1.4. And when it comes to camera placement, I want to place my camera on the opposite side of where the sun is. I'm shooting onto the dark side of Carla's face because this way we add some contrast, a little bit of drama, and here we create a little bit of a silhouette. If I were to place my camera on the same side as the sun, I would get a really bright and washed out image. Let me show you what this would look like. All we're left with are hard shadows and everything is just a little bit washed out. But as the opposite, if we go to our dark side again, then we just have a much more pleasing image and we created some layers of light. When it comes to framing Carla for our close-up shot, I'm looking for light patterns. And I keep talking about this in all of my cinematography breakdowns and lighting breakdowns because this adds interest as well as some depth to our image. So here on the very left side of our frame, we have some dark areas going into some light areas and then going into dark and light again. In this way, we just create a bit more interest. When looking at our close-up shot without any diffusion at all, we can see that the sun is casting a really hard shadow and that the overall quality of light really isn't great. The hard light highlights all little imperfections and blemishes, so we really want to diffuse the light. And the easiest way to do so is with a diffusion frame. You could just use the diffusion layer that comes with every 5-in-1 reflector that everybody has and that you can get cheap on Amazon. And I can link one down in the description below. But the reason why I don't use those is because they're really hard to mount. They're really flimsy and it's really hard to get them into place. So I'm using a 1.1 by 1.1 meter Manfrotto frame that is much easier to get into place to get the right angle of diffusion. As you can see here, I set up a C-stand with a boom arm, and on the other end of the boom arm I have my diffusion frame, and I will lower this in place right now so that you can see the before and after. So let's get the diffusion frame just between her and the sun. And just like this, you can see that our diffusion makes a huge difference. When it comes to choosing the right diffusion frame, usually we want to get our diffusion frame as close to our subject as possible, and we want to have as large of a diffusion as we can have. Here, since we're really close, we can get away with a rather small diffusion frame, but if we were to get wider or if we had 2 people in frame, then we would need to get a much larger diffusion frame. When it comes to the diffusion material itself, we don't want to go too high on our diffusion. I think right around 0.25 to 0.75 stops of diffusion is ideal when working with harsh sunlight. Because if you have too high of a diffusion stop, then we would just cast shadow. And that's not what we want to do. We only want to diffuse the sunlight, because if we were to cast shadow, then she would be much darker than the background, and we don't want our background to be lighter than our subject. One thing you really need to look out for when working with diffusion frames is that they are sturdy and they're not tipping over. I'm currently using a C-stand that I weigh down with 2 heavy shot bags, but even a C-stand is not necessarily my first choice. My first choice would always be a heavy-duty combo stand, so do as I say and not as I do. Ideally, you have a second person that can stand next to your C-stand or your combo stand and make sure that nothing is tipping over. Because let me tell you, as soon as there's a gust of wind, these diffusion frames will act as a sail. Before we talk about how to achieve the best results when shooting in harsh sunlight on a larger scale, when we have a wider shot or even multiple people in frame, I want to give a shout out to my upcoming interview masterclass that will launch on September 1st. In this course, I will teach you everything you need to know about how to shoot high quality interviews, how to light for storytelling instead of just making it look pretty, what camera equipment you need, how to record crisp audio on set, which angles to choose, and how a composition can make a huge effect on the emotions you want to portray, a little bit about how to prepare and conduct an interview properly, and much, much more. The course will go live on September 1st with a 25% discount on launch week, but you can already pre-enroll right now and also get the 25% discount. There's a link in the description for you to check out, and now let's get back to the video. When having a much wider shot but we still want to use our sun as a key light, we will do basically the exact same, but we need a much larger diffusion frame. All of the other rules that we just talked about still apply. But what if you want to have a more high-key look, a more commercial lighting, and we want to brighten up our image? Then we can bring in a fill light. To battle the sun, we would need a really strong light source. So the easier way is to use our sun as a fill light and bounce it back onto our subject. And this we can achieve with either a reflector or a bounce card. But keep in mind, since we have a wider shot, we also need a much larger bounce board here. In the example that I'm showing you right now, we have about a 10x10 diffusion frame and a 6x6 bounce card. Generally speaking, there's 3 different types of bounce cards: white, gold, and silver. Most of the times I'm using a white bounce card because it gives off the most natural and to me most pleasing results, but it's also the weakest out of the bunch. The silver bounce reflects a lot more light, but it's also a harder light, and therefore it's harder to achieve the same soft results that we can get with a white bounce card. The golden reflector I usually only use in a sunset or sunrise situation to give off a really nice warm light. To get the best results with our bounce card, it takes a bit of finessing and practice to get the angle just right to have the sun reflect the light of our bounce card back onto our talent. Especially when using our sun as a key light, because it's already at a specific angle, so we're not left with a lot of room to reflect it back onto our subject. An even easier way to achieve this is when our scene is backlit, meaning the sun is behind our subject. Here we don't even necessarily need diffusion material, and we can go with a bounce card or a reflector all by itself. Our sun now doesn't act as a key light, but as a rim light, and it gives our subject this silhouette of light and separates it a bit more from the background. And then we bounce the sun off our reflective material back onto our subject, acting as a key light. A little while ago we shot an outdoor commercial, mostly utilizing just this technique. We had all of our shots backlit by the sun, and then we just used a large reflector to bring back light onto our talent. But just as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, be careful with large diffusion or reflective material because it can act as a sail when there's a lot of wind outside. And there you have it. This is an easy way to shoot in harsh sunlight conditions without using any lights at all, and just with the help of diffusion material as well as a bounce card to still achieve great looking results. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, then please give it a thumbs up because it really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more cinematography breakdowns, lighting breakdowns in the near future because I have a lot of cool stuff coming up. And make sure to also check out the link in the description and check out my interview masterclass.